it has seemed to me from when I first read Samson Agonistes, which was long before September 10th, 2001, that the issue, if I can quarrel just a little bit with the framers of this conference, the issue is not just religion and violence, but it's religion and mass violence. And while it's very interesting to think about parallels between somebody like Dalai Lama and somebody like Jayal, I'm bothered. And I think that for us to understand what Milton is saying in Agonistes, or what that poem means, what that play means, is to understand that he does believe that the mass killing of all of those people is justified. And if we are secular and liberal, and we do not believe that that kind of thing can be justified, then this is a big problem. Well, and I mean, I acknowledge I'm stunned by Milton's mind and his ability, his power with the language. I'm stunned every time I read it, whatever it is. But Samson Agonistes is terribly, terribly troubled because of this. And it is partly because of the world I live in, but it's not just because of 2001, and it's not just because of suicide bombers. It's because Milton justifies mass violence, or his beliefs do.
Right, and on the basis of the beliefs that Regina has so beautifully detailed today, and before today, you might like to think of having Shakespeare for dinner, over to dinner, and that would be a pleasant evening. With Milton, it might be a little risk. Because he might at some point decide, well, this guy belongs in the category of, and, you know, that'll be it.
Regardless of what, I think there's a good piece by C.S. Lewis and Tilliard called The Personal Heresy.
Oh, yeah.
And he says, you know, if Michelangelo made a statue of a Gestapo soldier doing some terrible thing, he would want to be able to take the position that this is a brilliant, wonderful statue, regardless of what its subject is. That his role would be, that it would be just as good a statue as it would have been if it were, you know, if it was the Pieta, if Michelangelo did it. And then I think the other side of that argument is that if you can make that statue, it can't be a good piece of art. Right. And that's the Professor Carey position.
But there's also, you know, this is a very big argument. It turns up in all places. In terms of the structure of legal structures, it turned up in a big debate held in the late 50s between two legal theorists, H.L.A. Hart and Lon Fuller. And what they were arguing about is whether or not Nazi law was law. That is, was it a system of codified, you know, penalties, rewards, regulations that we call law, although a form of law that we would have disliked, or was it, as Fuller argued, not law at all, because it can't be law unless it is informed by the right humanitarian values. So this argument goes all over again. I want to say something before this, so I want to say something on behalf of John Kerry. First of all, I want to say, you know, his essay, small little essay in TLS, where they only let you do small little ones, is 7 years old, and it's still going strong. And that's, you know, that's an accomplishment. The second or third thing I want to say, he wrote some brilliant essays on Andrew Marvell, and an absolutely insane but very smart book on John Donne. So.
And I guess I'd like to add something about idolatry, because while I was trying to unpack what I feel is a kind of logic in this poem, I would like to highlight how dangerous I think the category of idolatry is, because one of the things I'm exploring in another context in further work on the subject is this category of political idolatry, wherein it's just a word that we use to label our enemies, right, and to justify our violence. So the phrase that Osama bin Laden used was that the world is divided between the camp of believers and the camp of infidels. I mean, that's scary. And America's rhetoric veered in the same kind of direction. You can call someone a pagan, an infidel, you know, an idolater, and because you want to wipe them out for whatever reason. And so it's a very dangerous category. And yet it has this illustrious history, beginning with the Decalogue, beginning with people making a golden calf while the law is being given to them of justice. And so in its origins, it is designed as the opposite of justice.
One very small point, I seem to be the person of small points today. Remember that the particular destruction in Milton Samson is of the rulers. It's of the people who have the good seats under the canopy or whatever. The rabble escapes. Both Philistine and Israelite rabble escape. So it's not mass murder in quite the same sense that we usually think of indiscriminate mass murder.
It's discriminating.
It's discriminating mass murder of the rulers. It's the Nazi perpetrators of the concentration camps would be, I think, the better analogy.
There's no collateral damage in that
Right.
horrible phrase.
That's the point.
I was going to say that I was going to offer a footnote to what Gina said. I remember watching television. We were all assuming that Samson would be equivalent to the people who flew those airplanes into the World Trade Center. And the people on TV that I was, as I was surfing on the week after that happened, I watched, I think it was Pat Robertson and Jerry Falwell talk about the United States as Samson, who had lost divine protection because they had gone astray, and he left them open to this attack. Instead of, I mean, they missed the obvious symbolism of the towers crumbling down, and saw us as the Samson figures who had been blinded by the Philistine Delilahs, and now we had to come back. And I think that we know what the next response would have been.
I guess a final comment is that I think that horror can be productive. And I think the fact that we have a tragedy here that is the single greatest translation of the Greek tradition in tragedy into English, the fact that it's poetically so stunning, and Milton's most experimental poem, and he pulls it off. And the fact that it's in many respects, the most human treatment of his perennial themes, in that we have that stunning opening speech of Samson, blind and defeated. That one thing that hasn't come up here is that Milton himself also loves to detail in his career, and also would seem to endorse an ethic that we explore. I think that when we have to approach the text in all of those dynamics, we can come to a more sophisticated understanding of how we think about English literary tradition, and also how we think of our own humanist traditions and our own liberal impulses in light of the world in which we're surrounded in all of these examples.
Well, I think that's a good place to stop. So I want to thank you all for coming. Thank our panelists for